go ahead and officially call this meeting to order. And under item A4, ask for a roll call of members who are present this evening.
Mr. Wall?
Here.
Mrs. Heim? Here.
All right, moving to item A5, Mr. Trout, are there any revisions of the agenda this evening?
Yes, we have quite a few, actually. We're going to start with the first item is I'm going to add item to F4, personnel reports, and within that. I also would like to add under consent agenda F11, donation to the agenda. I'll talk about this just in a minute, but that's for the Huntington North High School trap team, shooting team, so I'd like to add that. And lastly, I'd like to add the consent agenda F12, Huntington North High School part-time security officer compensation for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the proposed revisions of the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the revisions of the agenda as presented.
Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion to revise the agenda. I just liked your reaction when it popped up. All right, motion passes 6-0. Moved to item B1. This is an opportunity for public comment by members of the community. If anyone would like to address the board this evening, please. And it looks like no one having come forward. We'll move on to item C1, facilities, permission to award bid.
There is a new, before we get into that, Mr. Roth, we have a new face.
Introduce Tanya Lockmeyer. She's our administrative assistant to Mr. Brimberry and myself. She is shadowing Mrs. Gray. She's to the right of Mrs. Gray, supporting through the board meeting process and learning how a board meeting is conducted. And so, Tanya, we appreciate all the work and effort that you do and excited to have you here.
We're all blessed. Cindy is a trooper. She is here at every meeting, has not missed, ever. But we thought to be redundant and purposeful in what we're doing, and Tanya's dynamite. We couldn't do what we're doing every day in our office without her, and so she, over the next couple of meetings, will be shadowing Cindy and learning how to do this. So I just wanted everybody to know that. C1 is permission to award bid for the administration office renovation and furniture quote. In your board packet, what you have here is a lot of information on this piece, but to give you the proposal up front, then I'm going to have Mrs. Smith come and talk to you about the financial implementation, financial issues within this issue, whatever. It's been 6 weeks. Be nice. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm recommending for your consideration this evening Allen County Builders for this project, and I'm also recommending the furniture quote from Smith Furniture here locally also for that. So, Mrs. Smith, let me turn it over to you and give us the important details as what we're doing financially here, okay? Is that on, Pam? It was? I don't think it is.
Okay, we'll start over again. If you recall, last fall and earlier this year, we went down this road on the renovations and moving to a new admin building. We discussed the ready-made building. We had tons of buildings that we discussed, and then we landed on the ready-made building. In that process, through executive sessions and public sessions, we talked about what kind of budget we were going to put together for this project. And at that time, we settled on $1.5 million, and that we would utilize our rainy day funds. And if you recall, the last several years, we were able to put a little excess in our rainy day funds in anticipation for this future project. So here we are with the future project. Earlier this year, of course, we purchased the ready-made building, and if you recall, that purchase price was around $575,000. In the information that you see in your board docs, you'll see that the net which cost the district was a little over $552,786.80 to be exact, and that was due to credits that are given during the closing settlements and things like that for the taxes and all this other that brings it down to the net. Just like when you're purchasing a home, you have your beginning price, then you have any kind of credits that are applied to the buyer and the seller, and then the net due at closing is the amount that, of course, that we take off that $1.5 million. Then previously the board has already approved a contract for Veridian, our architect, to be able to manage this project. And then tonight we bring to you what Mr. Trout just talked about, is the construction part of this. If you recall, that's what we agreed upon for the $1.5 million, was the building purchase and the construction that was needed of that building for the administration to move to that building, and that's where we landed on the $1.5 million. So then you'll see the renovation bid that Mr. Trout is proposing for this evening, and then along with the furniture bid, and that altogether puts us a little under the $1.5 million, and we also have some other things that we'll be doing. It could be technology or those, so we'll be right about that $1.5 million at the end of this project for the construction part of the project. Now later we might have things, just like any thing that happens with our other buildings, and that could be repair and maintenance, parking lot, regular maintenance on that. It could be filling and sealing, or partial replacements, or other things, just like we do with every single one of our buildings here at Huntington County Community Schools. So those type of things after this major part of the construction will be done through our regular operations fund, through our regular capital plan, projects plan that we run through the board during our budget process. So that is our history, and after all of this, our rainy day, after the 1.5 is spent for the year, will have us down about a little over $2 million, and that is by design. And we will anticipate and look and analyze at the end of this year if we have any other excess funds that we've had in the past, any other funds that we can transfer to rainy day and build back up more of that rainy day. But our amount that we have in rainy day is that, of course, that $3.5 million. We've spent some out of that, of course, for the purchase, and then it's anticipated at our year end to be around $2 million if we do not transfer any other funds into rainy day. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have at this time, or anything else you would like me to clarify.
One point of clarification, in your board package, you'll see a design that's laid out in there. You may say, John, that looks pretty bare in a lot of those rooms. The reason for that is we're not buying furniture for those rooms. We're actually bringing that furniture that we currently have from Salamone with us. So if you see rooms that do not have any furniture in them, and there are several, we are actually bringing furniture that we currently have at Salamone and using it in this new facility. So questions that you may have for Mrs. Smith from a financial standpoint?
In the rainy day fund, we had already pre-allocated 1.5 million in the budget, so there's no additional budget appropriations that we need to do to make all of this work, correct?
Correct.
I don't know if everybody could hear that. You want to say that again, Becky, and talk to that just a minute? just so
Mr. Wall's
everybody can-
question was the 1.5 million that we've already allocated in the budget. We have to go through a budget appropriation process, and we do that through our annual budget. We did that last year in anticipation for this. Mr. Wall was asking if we would need any additional appropriation or additional funds in the rainy day for this project, and the answer is no. We're fine with the 1.5 million that we have.
Terry, would you talk to us a little bit about timelines for this project, or a gentleman from Allen County Builders, but
Right.
you want to talk to us a little bit about this?
So I actually may look to Rob. Rob, as president of ACB General Contractor, we still call him Allen County Builders, but he's here in Huntington. So originally, we had hoped to bid and award this back in May, but now we're a couple months behind schedule on that. And originally, we had hoped that Rob would be finished in November. But based on this delay, Rob, what would you say?
Get the asphalt work done before the asphalt plants close. We can probably finish sometime around January 1st.
Okay.
Maybe the 15th.
So it'll
So
push
for
the
our
schedule a
people
little bit.
watching at home, Terry, could you repeat that timeline so everybody could hear that?
Right, so originally we were hoping to be done in November so that you could move over the Thanksgiving break and into December. But based on what Rob just said, it would be in January now. But Rob will talk about what remains in the project, which would not include the new parking lot. So that may help us. It is. So we still may be close to that original schedule based on what he just said.
The parking lot is not part of this project, so, okay. Go ahead, Becky.
We probably should clarify, of course, we had the base bid,
Yes,
and the base bid included all the alternates.
yes,
And we are taking out 3 of those alternates, so I believe our remaining is the steel ladder and the milling and repaving of the parking lot with the additional, some new lights. And I
Right.
believe that's it
right.
from
So our
what we're
community's not confused. The parking lot that we're talking about, we were considering adding on to the parking lot due to the number of spaces, and since that point, we have decided not to do that. And
We'd like to
so,
stay within the
yeah,
budget
I don't
for
want
this
people
year.
to be confused when they see work being done on the existing parking lot. The parking lot in question that we're not going to do is the one that we're going to add on additional spaces there. So just so the community understands that. So thank you, Becky. Other questions for Terry or Becky at this time?
So it's just sealing and recoating and the restriping, a little bit of milling and repair, but minor. Rob, I don't remember who your subcontractor is.
It's either Brooks or E&B.
It's been a few months, Gary, so sorry, I don't remember who's on that list.
Any other questions? Thank you, Terry.
Anything else? All right, would anyone like to make a motion regarding the proposed bids and quotes?
I'll make a motion that we accept the bid from Allen County Builders for the base bid minus the deducted alternates 1, 2, and 4.
Yes.
As well as the furniture bid from Smith Furniture. I think that covers it all, right?
Yes.
As presented.
Is there a second? Any questions, comments, or discussion? Just briefly, I'd like to thank Rob and ACB. I think everybody sharpened their pencil, and I would like to thank Mr. Trout for staying within the budget that he set. But I'm going to be voting against it just from the fact that I think as we walk through this building, there's other needs here. But we're down this road. I get it, but there's just too many needs in the corporation right now, so I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to say.
Yeah, I would also like to agree that I appreciate staying within the budget. I still agree with you, Matt, that I think there are other things that we need to focus on, but I also am excited about this move in what it will provide the opportunities for at Salamone, and that's why I'll be voting the way I will be voting tonight.
Just so you know, Carrie, there have been some preliminary conversations about that, anticipating this evening's vote. We'll be getting the board involved with that process here sooner than later. But I just want you to know there has been some preliminary work done, just depending on the outcome of this vote.
And I know with the preschool, we are hurting for space
Yes,
down there right
yes.
now, so.
Okay, you're correct.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion to award the bid.
I'll also say that it's exciting to use two local Huntington companies.
Definitely.
You know, that was some of our thinking behind the scenes. If you took the tour this evening, Allen County Builders' work in our high school is outstanding, and they're local and they've done outstanding work. So I'm excited about the future with this. So thank you.
All right, motion passes 5-1. We'll now move to D1, Indiana Wesleyan and HCCSC MOU.
Okay, what I have for you this evening is I'm seeking your approval on a memorandum of understanding with Indiana Wesleyan University. We have currently, we are down, I think Chuck and Jay can tell you this, we are down to the bitter end of hiring the last few remaining open teaching positions. So Chuck, if I would start with you in secondary, we're down to a handful, I know.
We're at 3 at the high school. We believe we're full at Crestview and Riverview. As of we speak, we're down to 3 positions at the high school. And so this memorandum of understanding might be very important as we still have a couple weeks left.
Okay, and Jay, how are you feeling about where we're at?
3 in the elementary.
Yep.
3 positions. So
And so, we have at this juncture exhausted all of quote-unquote the traditional means of filling teaching positions. And so, before I was on my leave, I had been working with Indiana Wesleyan University about this program and the possibility of us going down this road. I'm sorry to bring this to you. I really am on July the 22nd. I hope to have this done at June, but there's been some other things that have happened, so here we are this evening. What this is called from Indiana Wesleyan University is their Aspiring Teacher Step-Up Program, okay? And she's going to take me to the next slide here. What this is that Indiana Wesleyan University is willing to work with us in building a cohort. And I'll explain what a cohort is here in just a second. But this is an accelerated degree program, and we'll show you how we're going to fund it here momentarily, where we develop classroom teachers and get them certified with the state of Indiana. And then ultimately, it's another means for us to recruit and to attract top talent to our district and have a larger pool. Go ahead, Cindy. The next slide here talks to you about the teacher development pipeline. This is what we're trying to do, is take existing adults and have them fully certified within 1 to 3 years. Okay. And I've really talked to this, but number 2 here is identifying candidate levels. And we have started the process of interviewing people who work in our district who are not fully certified at this point, but have a desire to be a classroom teacher. And by the way, they're going through a full-blown interview process. They have been dynamic workers for us, paras for us in the district right now, the people we're talking to. We would hire them, and there's a lot of different ways you can go about this, as a substitute teacher, a service contract, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Gives them an opportunity, like I've said before, to complete their degree, get licensed, and then hire them as a full-time teacher. Okay. These are the different levels, and we're finding that people fall in these categories, all right? We may have adults in our community, and I might say if this could be for anybody in our community, we may have adults in our community that have little or no college background, or have maybe up to 50 hours of college credits completed. We're having those conversations too. We may have people in our community who have more than 50 hours of college credit, who are interested in getting into the teaching profession. And then we have what they call the champion instructor, people who already have a BS degree, but it's not in education. I've already had one of those conversations with one of our community members over the weekend, having this. This gives you a breakdown, and I'm not going to read this to you, but how long would it take someone to become fully certified? And these three levels here give you an idea of approximate time frames that this would do. Jay, Chuck, if I remember, if not all of these courses are online, right?
Yeah, they're in the module format, I believe, be after work hours in a module format at their pace, but there are end dates to it, is my understanding.
Right.
So you have to complete it in a certain time so you can move on to the next course.
Right. So they would teach during the day, go to class, some in the evenings, and then they become certified. Okay, Cindy. So we're just going to give you some of the nuts and bolts of how this is going to work. Currently, there are 8 school districts in Indiana that are doing this program. There are, oh my gosh, I lost track of it. They're also working in Texas. They have hundreds of candidates going through the Texas programs right now through this. And this just shows you, and I'm kind of repeating myself, but what we have landed is calling these people associate teachers. Okay? This is where we would be, where they're still doing bullet point 1 and 2, but they would be classified as an associate teacher in our school district. Go ahead, next one. This is letting you know where they could get their degrees in. What's some of the possibilities to get their degrees in? Carrie just mentioned preschools are one of our fastest growing programs in our district. This is a conversation I'm having currently with a couple of people about getting their early childhood endorsement with that concentration. Also elementary certifications and secondary certifications. So there's different levels there that they could do inside that program, okay? This, again, just shows you degree options, and I'm not going to get into the weeds with this, but it just goes to show you it's a program that you've got to work at. This is not just fluff. This is not something that's going to be easy. This is something that's going to, force you to work at and work hard at this, and that's what we want, is highly qualified adults working with our students. And this gives you some idea of all the requirements that we have. I'm currently in the process of thinking about developing an MOU between us and them. That if we do this with you, here are the requirements that we're asking from our perspective as a school district in here also. Okay, Cindy. Again, Chuck just mentioned this self-paced alternate licensure program. It shows you all the details that's going to go into this. You'll see it's very similar to what college students are going in and to do to complete their field work in order to become also licensed. Okay. All right, how do you fund this? And this is where you may have your most questions at. They gave this slideshow as an example. Our starting teacher salary is actually $42,500. Okay, so you can kind of do the math backwards from there. Associate teacher salary would really be about $33,300 if you look at it in our model that we would have. The difference in the funds is about $10,000, roughly, actually about $9,200. here's where we help. Here's where we come in as a school district. The $7,200 there is the tuition fee. Okay? So if I would take the $42,500 and then pull the tuition fee out, and then pull the mentor stipend out with a mentor teacher here in the district, that's what gets their salary down to roughly about that 33.3 time frame. Now, if you compare that to what they were making as a para, that's a significant jump up with that. Also, we're helping with pay their tuition in the process. So it's a win-win on both sides. The memorandum of understanding I'm talking about is this, that if it takes them 2 years to complete the program, once they're completed, I would put them on the third level of our of our compensation model. And those are some of the details. I'm just giving you an example of working out that. So if a person commits to us, what's our involvement with them? And in return, how many years are they going to work with us after they become certified? Does that make sense? Because we have an investment in here too. Okay, so that gives you an understanding of how financially we could do this. The community is learning about this for the first time. There may be somebody out there who has always wanted to get into the teaching profession, but for whatever personal reasons have had situations in their life that kept them from doing that. I'm now notifying the public that we're going to venture down this road with your approval. Okay, Cindy. That's it? So, it's quick. You have a sample of the memorandum of understanding. Jay helped me this afternoon. He was literally on the phone with IWU this afternoon with this. I will have all the details put together and bring this back to you at the first August school board meeting. But we are in the throes of actually hiring people as we speak. And I don't want to, I got 3 principals chomping at the bit right now, want to know if they can get started with this. And I said, no, not till we have the school board meeting tonight, so I can see where the school board's at with this. But if you are good with this, then we will start the implementation of this program, and I'll bring you back the memorandums of understandings at the next school board meeting. You have a sample one, and I just want you to know that I've worked with our local attorney on a couple changes with language in there, and they've agreed to that verbally today, just so you know. So Joe has looked at that, has given us some great suggestions, and Indiana Wesleyan is actually going to give me some samples of memorandums of understanding that other school districts have too. And this is one of these things where if I was here in June, we'd have it all buttoned up and with a bow on it, but unfortunately we don't. So what comments or questions do you have for me with this?
You didn't, and maybe I missed it. Not sure that you mentioned the HCTA is.
Oh, yes, sorry, thank you. I have talked to Mandy Stevenson, not Mandy Barnum, but John Bordeaux at length with the mentor teaching in big picture. Because we asked them to do that, and we're at the mercy of the local university to investigate into the future. And there's any, when you go through negotiations in 2 years, or a year from now, you can always talk about that. But that was their one question. But yes, Mandy Stevenson and John Bordeaux have been, up to this point, very supportive of this. Okay? Thank you, Tim.
It looks like, at least on the draft MOU that you shared, that we are agreeing they are our exclusive provider. I guess, are there other schools, like does Ball State have a program like this?
Yes,
Is
and
Huntington looking to do this?
Yes, and that's one of the changes I asked for and they've agreed to do, is I did not want just to commit to a university. So, for example, in the future, next year, if we have other people and they would like to choose another university that does something very similar and we can agree on the financial part of it in the memorandum of understanding, I would like to have that flexibility. So they said that they would agree to that. There was a point on there with your profession of jurisdiction piece that I have talked to them about, and they're also willing to change that to Huntington County also. So those are the two main points, and they verbally agreed this afternoon. Jay, I'm not speaking out of turn here, am I? Jay and I were on the phone with them, and they agreed to both of those adjustments. Okay?
Because these people, because these individuals won't quite yet be fully licensed teachers, they do not fall under the $42,000 minimum salary, is that
Right,
correct?
well, and that's the whole nother piece, that with that memorandum of understanding that I'm trying to get written, that everybody understands that. So for example, another great point that Val brought up this afternoon was perf and turf. So they would still be under the perf until they're fully certified, then they'd move over to the turf. And so when I'm saying to you, the memorandum of understanding, there's a lot of these details that we need to spell out up front, so there's no gotchas, so they know. So for the 42.5 floor, technically, we're meeting that standard, except for the fact is they're not a certified teacher within that, and that's how we're helping to offset the cost with this program. Becky and Val, am I saying that correctly? Yeah, because Washington Township does something very similar to that, okay? But great question. Just so you know, the one other avenue we're currently looking at, and we have one person that we're very impressed with, is somebody who is student teaching this fall. Their university has allowed them to come in, and if we hired one of our veteran retired teachers to work with them for 10 weeks, they would then be fully certified. They've already passed most, if not all, the praxis test.
Yeah, they've passed 2 of the 3, and they're waiting this week for their 3rd one. Feel very confident.
Right. So we are looking at alternate paths here, but we're talking about high-quality candidates here. We really are talking about high-quality candidates here, and it's really exciting. But Mr. Peters and Mr. Brimberry and I have been around for a couple of days. I was told when I went to college a few days ago that there would be a teacher shortage in the early 90s. Well, it only took to the 2020s for that to happen, but we are there. I am very proud of all of you, too. Our new comp model that Mrs. Smith helped us put together has truly helped us in this process. We are now very, very competitive in the market. Where we weren't before, we are now. And so that has helped us tremendously. And so kudos to her work with that and the Teachers Association, too.
So do you want any action this evening, or?
I would just like, what I'm asking for your approval this evening is just to move forward with the program so Chuck, Jay, and I can move down this road in filling these last remaining positions, and I'll bring you back those memorandums of understanding for your approval. I just like to know this evening that I have your support to move forward. That's why I gave you the sample MOU. The only 2 things that's going to change is the exclusive piece, and the second piece is a jurisdiction paragraph, okay?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think this is a great concept, because if you can get people that are already here, already interested in education, and then up their training and certifications, that seems like a great concept.
It's the only way I think that you can continue to fill spots is to be creative. And to see this kind of stuff is exactly, and bigger relationships with higher learning institutions is never a bad thing either, so.
No. Which is why I didn't want to be exclusive with one here. I wanted to give future candidates the flexibility of choosing. And then what Val and I would have to do is that model I showed you financially is adapt it, because each program is going to cost a little differently. But we've got to follow the same model moving forward. But I wouldn't start with the next university without having your approval.
And I'm assuming that this is similar to the transition to teaching programs?
Very similar.
Okay.
The difference here, Carrie, is that now we're talking about people who may not have that many college credits.
Right.
That's the difference. The gentleman I was talking to this weekend who has a BS in something else, that was traditionally a transition to teaching person. Now we've included those people into this group of, Jay and Chuck could tell you stories where people always wanted to go to college, tried to go to college, but there were things in their life that kept them from going to college. Well, now they're dynamite employees for us, and what they're missing is that licensure piece, and they're in a couple of situations we're working in. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here. They're very excited for this opportunity, because what you have is you have people in your community who are invested in your community, and we're coming alongside them, helping them, And their chances, what they're seeing nationally with these type of programs, they stay in your community long-term. And so I think it's a win-win for both sides of the program here.
All right, any other comments? All right, I think we all feel comfortable in moving forward with that, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do. And I'll bring you back the memorandum of understandings completed at the next board meeting then, okay?
Sounds good. All right, we'll now go to D2, employee handbooks.
Yeah, this is the second reading of the employee handbooks, and I know there's been significant discussion on this when I was away, but to start the conversation this evening, I'm recommending your approval of the administrator and classified handbooks as it's presented to you this evening.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. That motion was tabled at the last meeting, so we cannot do action on it until that tabled motion is taken care of.
All right, so would anyone like to make a motion to, regarding the motion that was tabled last time, or the topic that was tabled last time?
I'll make a motion that we untable it, put it back on the agenda.
D-table?
D-table, untable,
Is there a second?
retable.
I can second that.
Take the motion off the table.
I second the removal.
And voting on it this evening?
Yes.
Any comments or discussion on that motion? All right, so first we'll vote on the motion to reactivate the matter that was tabled at the last meeting. And I apologize for those that know Robert's Rules of Order for butchering these terms. All right, that motion passes 6-0. So now we have recommendations from administration. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the proposed handbooks that are up for adoption this evening?
I'll make a motion that we approve the handbooks as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, or discussion before we vote?
So what's in the current agenda, the same that was in the last agenda? So that would be the new, could you just basically go over the positions that are going to be in the administrative handbook that are a change?
Cindy, do we know which ones are a change? I'm sorry.
There's a marked up version. I'm just making sure that I'm looking at the right marked up version.
Administrative handbook changes are to the date on the cover. We added in under insurance benefits. It had medical, didn't have dental and vision. We added those two in there.
Which we have done before in the past. We're just updating it, yes.
Just added the term leave under sick leave days. Clarified the maximum that could be accumulated up to 180 and spelled out the word 180, words 180. Vacation to be used in a calendar year, just clarified that, and any unused days above 40 would be forfeited. Added the word business to personal days. Bereavement leave, we added or a stillbirth by an administrator to be consistent with the teacher contract. That was a change last fall. Added  to be consistent with the teacher contract under bereavement. Professional leave, just clarified all conference expenses other than mileage there.
I think
And
I
then,
think you were looking at who is on, so page 6 has the list of
The
people
list.
that are,
5 on
page
mine.
5, yeah,
is it
page
page 5 on
5.
yours?
We updated titles and positions there.
yeah.
We adjusted some dates.
The number of contract days were correct.
I think I'm on the same page.
So anything in red was added because that was not in the previous administrator handbook.
And
the
then
one in-
Chief Financial
Purple.
Officer was added as
As well.
well.
Purple was added too.
Yes.
Okay.
Then classified, did you want to know classified as well?
I was just working on the administrative one at this point, yeah. Just want to make sure I was looking at the same thing that we were talking about tonight.
Yes.
So any additional questions or comments? None? Mr. Wall?
No,
No? Okay. All right, then we'll go ahead and vote on the motion to approve the administrator handbook and classified employee handbook with changes as noted. All right, motion passes 5-1. We'll now go to D3, City of Huntington and HCCSC agreement for SRO.
Yes, when I came in a couple of years ago, school safety-related items were at the top of many of our lists, correct? And as we were moving forward, and at that point in time, we had one SRO. And now, this evening, I am thrilled to bring this agreement to you for your consideration. This agreement for the upcoming school year is with our current, one of our current SROs, Ben Whitman, but an additional new name for you this evening is Daniel Lowe's, who will be primarily stationed out of Riverview Middle School. Officer Lowe's will begin shadowing, if approved this evening. Officer Whitman starting a week from today. I've put all of the financial obligations for you as a district in here, as we have shared cost with that agreement, which spells it out. A couple of you have asked me what our portion of that agreement is. Per SRO at $65,822.80. Okay, and so for your consideration, I want to thank Assistant Chief McCutcheon, who's helped with this. Congratulations to Officer Lowe's with this. We will officially get your picture taken and everything else with that, if approved this evening at the next board meeting, so you get to come to 2 in a row, okay, within that piece. I also would be remiss if I didn't say a significant thank you to Mayor Strick, to Police Chief Boxell, who have been instrumental in this piece also. The last piece of just great news with this is I talked to Sheriff Newton recently, last week, and they're in line with the county council to add the 4th SRO, which would, I think, be more plenty for us at that point. 2 from the city, 2 from the county. But I will tell you, the services of, and working so closely with our local police department, sheriff's department, has been just unbelievable. And so to all of you, I say thank you for your continued support within that. So I'm bringing that to you for your consideration this evening.
All All right, thank you, Mr. Trout. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the proposed agreement between the city and the school corporation?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agreement between the City of Huntington and HCSC for school resource officers for 2024-2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, or discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion to approve. All right, motion passes 6-0, and thank you for being here.
So you'll get an invite at the next meeting. We'll take your picture and welcome you to that. But again, congratulations. We are thrilled to have you part of our school district each and every day. So thank you very much. Yep.
All right, we'll now go to item E1, Junior Achievement of Northern Indiana.
Tonight, you have before you a memorandum of understanding that we would like to partner with Junior Achievement of Northern Indiana for the 24-25 school year here in Huntington County Community School Corporation. They have a great program. It's great for our kids across the district, and so we're asking for your approval tonight of this MOU that would allow us to have this partnership again in the district for the 24-25 school year.
All right, thank you, Mr. Peters. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding this proposed memorandum of understanding?
I'll make a motion that we approve the MOU with Junior Achievement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Carrie got in there way ahead of you. Any discussion, comments before we vote?
Jay, is this the first one we've had with Junior Achievement? Have we done this in the past?
Yes, we've done it for several years. We do JA in a day in second grade. Biztown is fifth grade. Finance Park, I believe, is in eighth grade. And we've been partnering with them for several years. Great program.
I thought so, yeah.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, we'll vote on the motion to approve. All right, motion passes 6-0. We'll now go to item E2, Bayada Home Health Care.
Yes, I am seeking for your approval this evening, the agreement between our school district and Bayada Home Healthcare Incorporated agreement. Bayada Home Healthcare Incorporated will provide one-on-one services for a student within HCCSC for the 24-25 school year. This organization will provide an RN or LPN to care for a student every day that the student is able to attend school. Just so we're clear, Board, the services to be provided may include escorting the student to and from school on a school bus and providing medical care to the student during the school day. So I'm just seeking your approval of this agreement.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion regarding the agreement with Bayada?
I'll make a motion, we approve the Bayada Home Healthcare Service Agreement for 2024-2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, or discussion?
Is this being done because of an IEP for special ed? And
Yes.
then how is this, is there any state reimbursement, anything associated with this as well?
If you look at the contract that I have put in your board packet, all of that is spelled out within that. To answer your question specifically, there is not in this case a reimbursement for that. That is between the school district with the student with this IEP and us and this organization. And
It's not typically the case, though. In other cases, we do get state funding.
yes, in other cases, in most cases, that we do get reimbursed for those pieces. I'm not saying that the state won't eventually come through and reimburse us for this need also, but I don't want to mislead you and tell you here on July 22nd that all of those details have been worked out. As with any case, we always try to secure reimbursement back from the state. I'm hopeful, quite frankly, that this one will be done also. But what I will say to you, in most cases, we are reimbursed from the state. I think what's confusing for our community is this. We have to pay by law. This is law. This is not a Huntington County Community School Corporation rule. This is state law that we, for example, in some cases have to pay a portion up front for these services. In some cases, we're invoiced for all the services. And then we're reimbursed back a portion, most generally all, but in some cases, a few $1,000s with that. Now, if I'm looking at our financials online, I can't find that reimbursement for that child. And the reason for that, quite simply, is it's a reimbursable grant from the state. It's not always pulled apart and spelled apart. And so, when we have exhausted all of our resources in our school district, and then we have exhausted all our resources in the community, I think people think it's just the school district. When we go through those two avenues and we've exhausted all of that, then sometimes residential placement is put here, or we have to do that there, or whatever. And another big misnomer is that people think, well, the parent can just do that placement. They don't take that. If it's not done by the school, by the judicial system, by child services, that doesn't happen. The only way that a child, some cases, gets placed, in all cases, is gets placed through one of those three organizations. And so to answer your question specifically is, we will go through this same process with this child. And we will do everything we can to seek reimbursement back from the state. But these are our kids. I can't select who comes to my school district and who doesn't come to my school district. And so these are our kids. And I will do everything in our power to reimburse this within this, but we will do that. I hope that answers your question.
Completely, and more so, and I would also just to add too, unlike charter schools, we have to take these children and we want these children. But
Yes.
Charter schools don't have to take these kids.
No.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, no, he teed me up really well for that, but
Private schools can say no.
say no. Public schools, we take all children.
Private schools that get vouchers from the state,
Can say no.
public dollars, can say no, and the responsibility falls back on us. And, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, if we don't meet this child's needs, there's the potential to be sued by the parents, actually.
Right.
We have an obligation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We don't
and
have a choice.
Becky, am I saying this, you're like jumping out of your seat trying to get my attention, but am I saying this absolutely correctly here?
Yes, you are. And then there's also what we have as our special ed grant. Of course, we know that's a big part of our special ed program. Within that special ed grant, we are required to have meet what's called a maintenance of effort. So there's a calculation that is done through this crazy spreadsheet, and we are allowed so much from the state, and then we also have to meet a minimum in our dollars outside of what we get from the grants and such. So if, like Mr. Trout talked about, is if we do not get, adequate reimbursement, it still counts toward our requirement of meeting that maintenance of effort. So we can still pull that underneath that report and be able to meet that as a district.
Right, it's the law.
It is the law.
Federal law too, I think. There's some federal portions of that too, I think. Is it Title?
Excuse me?
Is it Title VII that falls under that? I can't remember. My mom used to know what all the federal laws, because it's state law and federal law.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
All right, back to the Bayada
Sure.
health agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Sorry about that.
Oh, this is how we learn.
So I think we have a first and a second. Any additional questions or comments?
I just want to say it's a great that we as a corporation are doing all that we can for these students. And I couldn't ask anything more.
And further, we will vote on the motion to approve the agreements with Bayada. Motion passes 6-0. We'll now go to the consent agenda, items F1 through 12.
Okay, this evening I'm going to pull out and highlight a couple of these for you. Number 5 is what we do this time of year, every year. This is the resolution of the School Board of Trustees regarding human resource decisions. This is basically giving us permission to fill these last remaining positions prior to the next board meeting. Our next board meeting, if you can believe it, is a few days after school has started. So I don't want that to be buried in there. Number 7 in here is the Huntington North High School security officers for 24-25. We have them listed in there for you. I want to make a point of clarification here. Even though Daniel Lowe's and Don Whitney and Ben Whitman are listed here, those are for evening and after-school activities, okay? I want you to be aware of that. We are not paying them twice during the school day for what their services we're doing that you just approved this evening. We also have in there for you all the accounts payable and payroll vouchers. A request to accept donation. This is awesome. The Huntington North High School trap team, if you haven't been following along, was enormously successful this past school year. The coaches are very proud. Pat McLaughlin, the high school principal, and Corey Boxell, the police chief of Huntington City, were the coaches for this team, and they had a great year. Well, up and beyond that, I want to say a huge thank you to the Freedom Goose Outfitters for the hats and jerseys for this team for this year, this past year and next year. So they donated $1,059.86. And lastly in here, this is long overdue. Cindy had it up here. You're always good. You're just that much farther ahead of me. I appreciate this greatly. I want to thank Assistant Police Chief McCutcheon and Police Chief Boxell. We've had multiple discussions with this, and this is really long overdue. We haven't had a pay increase for our part-time police officers who come and supervise our events for a really long time. I mean, I look back a good 15 years. I think, Chris, I'm not speaking out of turn here, am I? Probably close with that. But you can see that Southwest Allen pays these part-time police officers $60 an hour, and we were at 23. We weren't even half of that. So my proposal this evening is for $40 an hour for these officers to come in. Now, we currently have 4 officers that are budgeted to work school lunches every school day at Huntington North High School, and we're going to pare that back to 2 because it's just going enormously well. There's no need like we did back in the old days for 4, so going back to 2. Athletic staffing, I listed, just so you know. People may not know this in the community. We always have 1 officer for girls basketball, 2 officers for boys basketball, 3 officers for tournaments, sectional, regional, semi-state. We have 3 officers for football games, 1 officer for miscellaneous, soccer, baseball. You'll see them here all the time within some of these pieces. So I just wanted to bring that to you. I really do believe that we have to be fair in this process as we're looking at that. So those are all the items for your consideration for the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trout. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Yep. What do you want to know?
I'm hesitant to do it beyond January 1 because the majority of the board is up for re-election and I don't want to do something. So can we just approve it until the first, until the end of January so that that new board could approve it and give enough time? I just don't want to do something and have that
Sure.
come back.
If that's what you want, if that's an adjustment you want to make, I'm okay with that. I mean, that's strictly up to you as a board for the timelines with that. Cindy, you want to get, in the past, this is pretty standard language that we have used, is that right?
It is.
We did it last time in February.
We did it, yeah, what we'll run into is just maybe having to do this again at the organizational meeting.
Right.
Because we will, January, February, get into one meeting and a work session again.
Yeah, which we're going to,
Likely, if that calendar's not set yet.
I would just think it'd be better with the new board in January, possibly just leave it in January, to the end of the year or however.
yeah, if that's the,
If it was a normal year, it makes sense, it's just what.
right, that's okay. I understand. No, it's whatever, it's the board's desire and wish, so. I can, if you approve it with that, I can easily get that back out and signed, but if that's what the board wants, we can easily approve that this evening to have that happen, so, okay?
I'm open to the rest of it. Don't want to do something and then throw us out. Who knows how the board may look in January.
My preference would be to operate as business as usual, not on a political cycle.
Works for me.
It's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure that, in particular, that HR decisions between regular board meetings is a problem. I don't really even know how it would change, because any change that we would make it difficult to make some decisions between a few board meetings. So, I'm okay with leaving it, but again, we can vote for it if you want.
Why don't we just make sure we put that on the first meeting in January's agenda to review it?
The discussion I haven't had with all of you, but I have notes down, is this. It seems to me that with the organizational board meeting, that we need to have 2 school board meetings in January and not a work session and a board meeting. Because in my notes from my last year's calendar, what I have been looking at, because Cindy and I have just started to work on next year's school board meeting timelines, is that I have written down in that section of my calendar 2 board meetings in January, because the length of the organizational meeting has to be the first one, and then there was too many weeks between meetings. And so what Cindy and I have talked about, I don't know if this helps or not, but I'm just telling you that we'll more than likely have 2 meetings in January, just like we have 2 meetings now coming up in August, September, and October for budget adoption. I've got the same note to do the same thing in January. Even though the work sessions are working really well, we're having great discussion, there's just a need for 2 board meetings in January for our business. There just is. So I don't know if that helps or hurts this
No, and
conversation.
I think that's good thought process, knowing what's going into the year.
Right, because several of you talked to me about it was just too long.
Yeah.
And I agree.
And that's why we originally adopted it back in February, seeing that process.
Right.
So, yeah. So I'm fine with that, say.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody want to pull a particular item out and vote on it separate from the consent agenda? All right, then we'll go ahead and vote on the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Motion passes 6-0. We'll go to G1, Digital Learning Grant.
HCCSC was awarded a digital learning grant in the amount of $22,880, and we're requesting your approval tonight to accept that grant. That was done through the IDOE, and so what we're hoping to do with your approval is to use that grant funding to purchase Conmigo. It is a remediation tool, K-12, that can be used, teachers that can use to help remediate students in all subject areas across the district. So just asking for your approval tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the proposed grant?
I recommend that we accept the digital learning grant as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, or discussion?
Just to make sure, this program is a part of Khan Academy, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Which is an outstanding program.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, we'll vote on the motion to approve. Motion passes 6-0. We will now go to G2, June financial reports.
Good evening. So before you and prepared in the packet this evening are the financial statements for June of 2024. A little bit of a status quo with an addition of one fund, and we'll get to that as we go through the slides. So as we always do, we start off with the education fund. We started with, at the top, budget month actual, we had $3,150,361 worth of revenue, and the expenses month to date was $2,718,888. You'll see that there's a transfer of $100,000, and that was through our settle up of the fiscal year end. We're able to transfer up to 15% of our education fund into operations, and this was just an opportunity to capture that through that fiscal year-end close through our basic tuition support. So it aligns within our appropriations, so you can anticipate another transfer coming up in October, which is typical of when we process those. So our ending balance after all of those outstanding purchase orders is $13,233,227 for education fund. Moving into debt.
You said fiscal year end. You meant
I apologize.
school year end, right?
I meant school year end.
Okay.
You are correct. I appreciate that, Mr. Wall. So debt service fund, June is the 1 and 2 months that we pay our debt service payments. So that means that we're repaying the debt obligations that we have. So we borrow money to do big construction projects that we would not otherwise be able to complete. And so in June and December are when we pay our debt service payments. So you can see those reflected on the expenditures. I'm going to back up a step, and that June and December is also when we receive our property tax levies. So we received $4,615,076 in local property taxes, and then we also receive a culmination of a few other local property taxes as well, in the amount of $278,373. So it aligns in with our budget order, our 1782 notice that spells out how much we're anticipated to receive. So we get half of that in June and then the other half in December, and we're right on track with what was anticipated to us to expect. Our debt service amount, so the principal plus the interest that we paid for those obligations was $4,084,821. So that leaves us an ending balance paying all of our bills for the month of $1,750,353.
Question now, and I apologize because I know you're new, but Becky's sitting right over there, so she may
Yeah.
know this answer too. Typically, the June draw is larger than we get in December, so this is probably the most amount of money because typically the one-time payments are all in here. So the December, when we receive money in December, it'll be less than that, correct?
Yep.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. So with the operations fund, we also receive our local property taxes. In addition to the debt service fund, we also get those local property taxes to the operations fund. So you can see that in the first line, we received $5,316,301. The other taxes that we also received was $453,055, and then miscellaneous income that we had come in was $61,888. So total for the month of June, including that transfer in from education fund of the $100,000, our total month for June was $5,931,244 in revenue. So salaries and benefits for the month of June, again paying our classified staff and other building expenses such as utilities and lighting. We had $992,102 of those expenses. So leaving us, after we pay all of our outstanding purchase orders, $4,199,434 in the operations fund for the month of June.
So I love taxes and we get them, and just to look at the differences, this would be less because this is where we realize property tax losses due to the property tax caps.
Oh, thank you.
We cannot lose money from the debt service because that's 100%. So what we would have normally lost out of there actually gets double dipped out of the operations fund, correct?
Exactly. Yep. Very good point. Thank you for addressing that. Rainy Day Fund, this is new for the month of June. We'll continue to incorporate this piece in. It is another budgeted fund, so we do have to advertise out for any of these appropriations that we want to spend. This is where we were talking about earlier in the evening when it comes to the ReadyMed building and converting that over to our admin office and then working on those projects and that completion. So the funds will come from this source. So there has been expenditures year to date of $628,707. And so those comprise of both the services that we've paid for the project scope to Veridian, that the board has agreed upon that contract, and then also the purchase of the building itself. So as we continue to move forward, as the board has approved the purchase of not only the furniture, but then also to ACB for the project scope for that renovation to happen, then we'll continue to move forward and pay those bills out of this fund. Right now, the fund balance is $2,917,540, but mind you, we only have $1.5 million in appropriation, and some of those have been spent. So that's where that column where it says $871,293, that's our remaining appropriations available to spend through the scope of the project. We do have a little bit outstanding in purchase orders, and that just accounts for the Veridian project as well. So second to last. Second to last is the food service fund. So again, this pays for the food and the awesome people who prepare the food for our kiddos and staff. There's not much activity for the month of June. However, we still do have the summer feeding program that transpires, and while it is funded by a state and federal grants, we do run some of those expenses through that are not funded. So for the month of June, we had $407,069 worth of revenue for those May reimbursements that we had filed and we received in June. So we filed information to the state for what our food costs were, and then there's a catch-up month on when we actually received that. Expenses for the month totaled $128,840, so that leaves us an ending balance of $671,594. And then lastly, we have our curricular materials fund, textbook rentals and sales, so a collection of monies from past years where we did charge for those items is $2,239. Expenses going out that comprise of those software adoptions and licensing was $143,037, leaving us an ending balance after we pay all of our outstanding purchase orders of $2,313,137. Are there any questions I can answer that have already been asked concerning the financials?
This is a question more for Jay because we're talking about the curriculum materials funds. Do we have any plans to do any adoptions before the end of the year and this fund goes away?
That is our hope, because we've shared probably for the last 2 years talking about science and social studies adoption. That's a huge need. Right now, everything that I'm seeing from the DOE, they've not lifted anything where they've given us permission. I've been in touch with Region 8 to say, hey, do you have any textbook adoption caravans out there? And so right now, that's kind of been put on hold, and I'm not, Becky, unless you know anything different, I have not seen anything yet that's taken that hold off to allow us to pursue that. But it's a definite need.
Point of clarification, the fund doesn't go away, it's going to shift into education. I know, you're so good at building up into the next step, Ryan. Mr. Wall's just so on point for that. So, to be transparent, and I appreciate you bringing this up, it's a great opportunity to talk about what's to come. So as of January 1, or even before that, we're going to be, per state legislation directive and requirements, we have to move this $2,313,000 or whatever that balance looks like once we get to December into the education fund. We'll still track it separately for these purposes respectively. It will not be commingled in with other items, but to make sure that it's used for what was the intended purpose and where the funds are received. And we'll still get that state reimbursement of the curricular materials. We'll still do all of that filing in the fall, and then when the state releases those funds for the curricular material costs that they're now paying, we'll receipt that into the education fund and track it in with this specific group of allocations.
So will that become like I'm used to calling them 100 series. That'll be a line item in the 100 series then covering that? Is that how we're going to have to track it instead of having it separate, or do we not know yet?
The State Board of Accounts, by the end, along with the DOE, by the end of this year, are supposed to give us those numbers. So of course, that's after we've prepared the budget. So we will separate out some special budget numbers that it will be easier to transfer to once we get to know those numbers.
And that's what I want to say. You got to understand, this is all after the budget adoption process, okay? So it's going to be really confusing to the community because we will have gone through this detailed budget adoption process, and then here we come in December, be my guess, at some point in time, and I'm curious of how we're supposed to do that with State Board of Accounts. I mean, it's going to be interesting.
So we've done, in my personal opinion, we've done a really good job of maintaining that fund and getting it ready when Jay needs that. Other corporations have had other issues. What I don't want to lose, and I don't want the board to lose sight of, is I don't want it to just go into that fund and just disappear.
No.
So that's where I'm really starting now, knowing that it's going to happen in December and knowing that's going to be after budget time. I just want to kind of make sure that we see where that goes and can kind of track it.
We'll have to keep it separate. And so when we're doing this reporting with you, we'll keep that separate. And I haven't even talked to Val about this yet. So we'll get there. It's just that I'm concerned because it's completely after the budget adoption process.
It was the fun little, hey, by the way, this is coming at the budget when we were sitting down in Indianapolis. Val and I were sitting at each other, and it's like,
right. It's really important for me that we're as transparent as we possibly can be, and this is going to be really confusing to people because it's after the budget adoption process, and then we're supposed to get this figured out. So it'll be we'll do that, Ryan. It'll be separate. We'll keep it, I think our frustration is they haven't released yet us to do what we need to do, which we're trying to get there, but it's just this, it's going to be a very weird timing is what it's going to be.
And I have a feeling you probably won't get any releases until after the budget session is
No.
done at the state, because who knows what's going to do with free and reduced, or what they're going to do with books.
And how grateful are we got 2.3 in here?
Yeah.
I mean, because we're going to be carrying, I can't prove this, but we could easily be carrying into the spring and without any reimbursement. And I don't know, Becky, what you're hearing in Indy, but that's what I'm understanding is that I'm grateful for the 2.3 because so many of our colleagues don't have that. So I don't know what's going to happen.
You're in the top, 2% that have this kind of balance.
Yes,
It's a blessing compared to others that are
Right.
negative or almost to zero.
well, because they're going to have to take it out of the education fund, and and it's so tight to begin with. And so we're in a very blessed position to be in here to give Jay and Chuck some flexibility and freedom to do what they need to do. But don't be surprised if this is not carrying over for several months after the first of the year.
How much, how close did the state get as far as our reimbursement to how much our expenses were? Do we know?
Nice
Yep, go
question.
for it,
I
go
didn't think
for it.
about
I
that
was
one.
not here
Good
for that.
job.
Okay. I can talk about that. It's totally different. That's why I call it a disbursement now instead of a reimbursement. So when we did the form, we sent in approximately, a couple $100,000, whatever it comes to be. Everyone did that in the state. So now the formula is everyone from the state has to put what it costs to educate a kid. There was not clear direction to all the districts on how to complete this JOT form from the state. So some only put what they actually spent that year, not what it cost to educate little Johnny Smith. For instance, if you didn't do an adoption, you still had a book or something that you provided to that student, and what was that cost of that book at that time? So all that went to the state. They take the budget amount, and then they base it on a formula that is divided by your enrollment. So it doesn't even matter what amount that we submitted. It matters the totality of the whole state of Indiana now, and then they take their budget and then divide it by ADM amounts. So we received several $100,000 more than what we even turned in, and the same thing happened to Indianapolis. For instance, we turned in approximately $1.1 million, and we received $1.6.5 million. So we actually got more this year than we anticipated, but that could be the opposite in future years also, depending what everyone turns in and what they do with the budget during the next legislative session. So right now, we're anticipated to go through the same process in the fall. We're supposed to do this JOT form thing in the end of October into November, and then they're supposed to let us know in December what our disbursement amount will be, and hopefully get that by December 31st. So right now, it's very hard to predict from year to year what we're going to get, since this last year was our first year. Just a reminder to you and the public, remember the old days when we had student fees, they had two buckets. One was your textbook, workbook, and device. The other was consumable supplementals. Those two together is what we charged families. What the legislative session did, they're only giving us the disbursement for the textbook, workbook, device portion. All the districts are out that money currently for the consumable supplementals. So we are have to be very strategic in what we spend and what we provide through our district budgets to be able to supplement that part we are not getting from the state. So I know that's a lot of information, but it's still an unknown animal in the future.
So Becky, talk to this on this chart up here. It says revenues and it has state reimbursement up here.
Yes, so
And it
that's
has
where
the
we were
actual-
talking about. The state reimbursement that you see, thank you, I forgot that was up.
Yep.
That $247,000, that's what we were given as a district as our estimate that we would get for a disbursement. The actual revenue that we received, so we did receive $500,000 more than what we anticipated, and that was this year only. So we have no idea when they go to give an estimate again, if will even be close or will be exactly what they're estimating.
So
Because
I-
that is pretty far off when it's more than, triple what we thought we were
Yeah, and
going to get.
I don't want you to get used to that difference.
Exactly. That's why
what
when
I'm
the-
trying to drive at here.
Yes,
Yeah, even though the actual was 247,
the
got-
estimate,
The estimate.
748.
yes.
And so please understand, yet last year about this time, Becky and I were prepping you, hey, by the way, we're probably not going to get our 247.
Yeah, and out of nowhere, all of a sudden, we got triple,
We got 748. Now, don't get used to that,
yes.
because what's going to happen is our colleagues across the state are going to figure out, oh, well, look what these districts did and look at what they got. Well, I'm just telling you, it has to slide back to more of the actual than what it ever was now. If
The
not-
only way I could see that changing, Mr. Trout,
Yeah.
is if all of a sudden, the next legislative session, which is the big money session, all of a sudden they put in that consumable supplemental amount. That's what we're aiming toward. So if anyone's talking to your legislators,
Right.
make sure that you pinpoint that they only put in the budget the first part of it, not the second piece of student fees.
Thank you.
The appropriation.
Yes, exactly, the appropriation that would be, but then even with that appropriation, we're only allowed to turn in is that
Right.
workbook, device, and textbook portion on that JOT form. We haven't been allowed to turn in the supplemental or consumables yet. So we're hoping all that will change along with the appropriation
Right.
in the future.
A lot of complex
It is.
details here, but I always appreciate Becky and Val sharing this by budget, okay? And so, please know that that number sticks out big, and I don't want you to get used to that. I hope you get used to that personally, but I just want you to be prepared that next year when we get into this, there could be some changes with this, okay?
Also included in the finance report section are the year-over-year comparison reports for education and operation. I've highlighted this section pertaining to June in green as a point of reference. It's on the top of the second page. But this is something that we'll build on as we go throughout the calendar year, where it's a really nice look back and where you can compare to where we've been over the last few years and how things are operating. So when it comes to education fund, our cash balance is up as we go into the upcoming school year. Now we're getting ready to have our state tuition and support amount change. Right now, we're operating in an estimated time period, so from January to about October. Once the count is finalized and taken in September, they'll apply it in November and December, and we'll have a true up. So right now, while we might be looking good, depending on what our enrollment count is this fall, we'll determine what our funding looks like for from July to December of '24. Any questions on this piece before I move to operations?
Val and Becky, I really appreciate this. I spend as much time in this as I probably do with any of the reporting that we do, to make sure there's not any outliers out there. And if you see significant differences as a board, it allows you the opportunity to ask questions. Okay, it really does. And you can kind of get lost in all of these numbers, but to me, don't let this go by without spending a great deal of time in this, because this really shows you some trend data about how we're doing year to year at the same month. So Becky and Val, thank you for this. I live in this quite a bit.
Yep.
So thank
I
you.
appreciate Becky's time putting it together. It's a high level, and even if you start here and then look at the other report that has the monthly detail, you at least have something to go back to on a year-over-year basis. So when it comes to the operations fund piece of historical comparison, And June's a big month. June's a month, and like I said, that we receive our property tax dollars. As Mr. Wall had mentioned, Operations Fund is where the property tax cap, it does impact us. So, and you can see year over year, how those levies have ebbed and flowed over the last few years. When it comes to revenue, expenses, we were down quite a bit in comparison to last year, and I'll look into that a little further. That one was one that piqued my interest on the differences. But the other side of it is we have so many construction projects going on right now. I feel like that's the shift of where our time is being spent right now is on those construction funds that are paid for with bond proceeds. So year over year ending cash balance. Again, it's in a healthy place, and we're still held to the effects of forthcoming budgets, and what do those rates look like, and so and what do our projects look like? Where are we at with our needs and making sure that our buildings are taken care of? So. Ever so mindful of cash flow and balances, and making sure that we're operating within our allowances, not only within appropriations on that permission to spend, but also on a cash balance to make sure that we're sustained for longevity.
One of the questions that we're going to work through with our strategic plan is what you want that cash balance to be. Okay? That's going to be an interesting conversation. We're actually going to work through, I'm planning on it right after the budget cycle, of sitting down with all of you and working through a process with Val and Becky to determine what do you want that cash balance to be, okay? How much is too much and how much is not enough? And we've got to be very analytical about it, I might add. But we are going to work through this so our public understands that this is what we want to work towards with a cash balance, okay? And so the reason I draw that to your attention, this is part of our strategic plan with you as a board.
And what makes that more complicated now is the fact that we're rolling in the curriculum fund into that as well. So
Well, no, that's
adjusts it even more than what normally would be.
exactly. And so that's why I'm bringing it up, is because we still have to separate that out. But that number here is really important. And it boils down to this: how much is not enough and how much is too much. And then this impacts our work in the school district every day. And that's what you will hold me to through the future, is we're going to work together in determining what that balance should be. Okay? Did I say that right to you? Yeah. Okay. All right? Any questions for Val?
Thank you.
All right, thanks for the opportunity.
Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the financial reports that were presented for June 2024?
Make a motion to approve the financial reports as presented.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll vote on the motion to approve the June reports. Kevin. I mean, Mr. Yarger. Mr. Kevin. Motion passes 6-0, and I'll go to H1, Volume 33, Number 2 of Policies, and I believe this is a second reading.
Correct. What I'm seeking for your approval this evening is the second reading of Volume 33, Number 2, for all those school board policies that are listed. I want to take this opportunity to thank Cindy Gray, who works with me on all of this. This is enormously time-consuming. We are updating literally all our school board policies to match existing state law and federal law, okay? And so it's when I see this in my calendar, I know that Mrs. Gray is also really excited to spend a lot of time helping me work through this process. But it's really important. I mean, it's essential that we do this. And so this is hours of work right here, just this section. We are making some big time inroads with this. And so I'm very proud of our work with this. So I'm just seeking your approval.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion regarding the proposed changes to volume 33, number 2?
I'll make a motion, we approve volume 33, number 2, policies and administration guidelines.
Is there a second? Questions or comments? Just so people know, this keeps us up to date on changes in the law. There's some pretty important stuff in there, like bus drivers using cell phones and all kinds of different things that we need to get up to date when they change the law in the state. So we'll go ahead and vote on the motion to approve the changes to these policies. Motion passes 6-0. Now go to item H2, special policy update for June of 2024, a second reading again.
Yes, Mr. Brimberry is going to start just giving you, just see if you got any questions regarding the personal communication devices. Chuck, anything you want to highlight there?
Yeah, I would say, Board, if you remember at our June board meeting, I think I was in a different chair over there, and there are some questions. Our Indiana legislature has entered into the, school or the cell phone policy and business, and we are compliant. Our handbooks, Mr. Peters and I, Mrs. Lockmeyer, Mrs. Gray, 3 of our principals have looked through. We listened to board input, and I appreciated it last time. We are compliant with the law, and that's what the policy is, but I will tell you, after looking at our handbooks, when you read through, I believe last meeting we talked a little bit about when the use of PCD or devices is permitted, they'll be placed on silent mode and sword. When they're not prohibited, or when they are prohibited by administrator or otherwise, then they need to be directed. This is really a common sense law, in my opinion, that is not a huge deal in Huntington schools. I've talked to Mr. Trout about this as well. We will be compliant with the law. Our handbooks already are. What you have is the administrators at our elementaries have the ability as administrators to say, we want those in your locker, book bag when you get there, place them on so they don't go off all day. That seems very reasonable. If a student has a special circumstance or a medical or so on, they would be permitted like we always have here. We believe our middle school handbooks do the same, and we communicate this. We believe our high school clearly has cell phones at the highest rate, as I think we all know. And Mr. McLaughlin feels that this policy reflects our current handbook, which means when a teacher asks you, I'm teaching, please make sure those are off and put away, that you do so. And when a teacher says you may use those for educational purposes, you may do so. And when they say, by the way, it's lunch, it's the hallways, it's whatever, use them appropriately. We believe the policy from the state allows us to do all of those things reasonably, and Huntington already does them. So we will put out a communication to our staff. We'll put out a communication to all parents and our kids that the handbook as written in the past will be what we follow. And these are all reasonable requests, and that's the way Huntington's operated far before I got here as well. So we feel good about it. I appreciate, I think Cindy listened about questions about Apple Watches and about all these things. Reasonable requests will be followed. If they ask you not to use them during educational times at the high school, they will not. If you don't do that, we'll deal with that in a very modest but moderate but effectively communicated manner, which is what they do now. And so middle schools will follow theirs, elementaries will continue as they have.
Jay, do you want to talk about, if you would, just for a couple of moments about student attendance?
Sure. If you're having trouble sleeping at night and would love to have something to read to put you to sleep, let me suggest to you Senate Enrolled Act number 282. And again, this is, as Chuck said, the Indiana legislator has made some changes to the Indiana Code. It's 20-33-2.5-4. It talks about truancy prevention in our districts. They now define an absent student as being absent from school 5 days within a 10-week period without being excused, or absent without a doctor's note. Written notification, when we identify those students, written notification will be sent by the school to the parents of the absent student, and the school is then required to have an attendance conference with the parents to discuss truancy prevention plan and measures to take into effect to help that student come to school and get to school. They also identify what we call a habitual truant, meaning they've missed more than 10 days without a valid excuse. And so that process is where they would report, the school would report to the prosecutor's office via an affidavit to share that information and then proceed with legal procedures with that student. So again, Indiana Code, some new updates for that. Just want to share that little snapshot coming to us.
So this is a second reading, so we're just seeking your approval for these two policies.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion regarding these policy updates?
Recommend we approve the special policy updates for June 2024 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments?
I just want to thank everyone for working on this. I know this was stuff that came out of the very last legislative session, and I know it wasn't planned, but I appreciate all the hard work in getting it ready for the school year.
Anything further? All right, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion to approve these policy updates. Motion passes 6-0. Now H3, policy 9700.
This is not an action item. I just want to make sure that the 8 of us are on the same page, okay? At one of the meetings, board meetings where I was gone on leave, we had some discussions from community and I think as us as a board about this policy about distribution and posting of literature. And this really boils down to approval of coming from my office, specifically coming from me, regarding publications that people are asking for us to send out, okay? So I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page. And so when you look at this policy down to letter C, which says distribution and posting, it says, and I don't mean to read this to you, but it really comes down to no materials for any profit-making organization are distributed for students to take home to their parents, okay? That can be interpreted a multitude of ways, meaning that if we are charging a student to be part of something, that can be read that way. How just so we know, so we don't have confusion with our community, is that from this point forward, my interpretation of that is going to be if a business asks us to approve a flyer that's got dollar figures associated with it, I'll deny that. But if a local organization is charging our students to participate in something, I'll go ahead and approve that and leave it up to the parents to decide if they want to pay the fee to participate in that or not. Does that make sense to you? Because I think we've had some confusion around this. It's easy for me to read that and go, if you're charging our students to participate in something, then that that would be denied, or if it's just a business. Now, I know you're going to say to me, well, how are you going to define a business? Welcome to my world. When we do that, I think it's pretty clear that when an organization's trying to do something versus a business promoting their business, for the sake of a term. So I'm just saying to you, are we all on the same page with that? Are you comfortable with that if that's how I make the decisions moving forward? I don't want to be adversarial with our local organizations who do so many great things for our kids. But that fee piece is what's the sticking point once in a while. And so I'm just saying to you, I don't want to be on opposite ends with our local organizations. If they're charging, I'll leave it up to the parents to decide if they want to do that or not. And where I'll draw the line with this school board policy is when it's a business asking me. Make sense?
I will, in a previous life, I worked for nonprofit and asked many times for permission to send flyers to the schools to play basketball or soccer. I think that's kind of the difference. At least I think it's easy enough, so.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Okay, we'll move on then to I-1, items of discussion by board members.
I want to say, Chuck, you did a great job while John was gone, but good to have you back.
Well, thank you.
You only post in the old ones.
I heard that.
Gary, we need to stop talking about that particular item of my leadership.
I do want to say thank you to all of you, and thank you for the continued support in the community. I'll be putting out a statement here in early August with that, but I do want to say I cannot thank Jay and Chuck and Cindy enough. I'm blessed to be here and to be surrounded by people who care passionately about what we do as a district, and I mean that. In all honesty, I thought family medical leave was something I would never use in my 40-year career. And I thought when I was told by my doctor that's what I needed to do, it'd be a few days. And he was right. Unfortunately, it took a while to get through this latest episode. But thank you to all of you, to Becky and Val. I mean this. It's great to be working in home in this community. And your prayers and your support mean more than I can ever say. I continue to get cards and letters and emails and texts and those type of things, and it truly means the world to me. So thank you to all of you. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion items? Drive by the senior parking spots and see all the artistic interpretations we have. There's some pretty cool stuff over there. Look out for school starting, sports coming up. We've already had a home football scrimmage. I know everybody's gearing up, so excited to start another school year. So thank you, everybody. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye.